Imagine a country so powerful that it seemed unstoppable. Then a bubble burst, and Japan entered a crisis that would last for decades and reshape its future. But Japan did not collapse like other countries. There was no single disaster, no sudden ending. Instead, the decline slowly became a permanent struggle. This is Japan, the collapse that never ended. And strangely, the story does not begin with failure. It begins with extraordinary success and confidence. In the 1980s, Japan was an economic machine. Its cars, electronics, and technology dominated global markets, while Tokyo seemed to represent the future. Investors believed Japanese assets could only rise. Property prices exploded, stocks soared, and money flooded the country. Everyone wanted a piece of Japan. But behind the success was a dangerous belief. Tomorrow would always be better. The higher prices climbed, the more people believed they would never fall. Then everything changed. The bubble burst. Stock prices plunged, property values collapsed, and Japan's unstoppable economic story suddenly went into reverse. Banks were left with bad debts, companies faced falling asset values, while financial damage spread through the economy and weakened confidence for years. But the crash did more than destroy wealth. It changed behavior. Companies became cautious, consumers became cautious, and everyone started waiting for recovery. People waited for prices to stabilize, companies delayed investment. Banks tightened lending. Slowly, an economy built on confidence began to freeze silently. And when everyone waits, spending slows, investment slows, demand weakens, growth slows, the economy begins feeding its own weakness, creating a dangerous cycle. This is where collapse never ended begins to make sense. Japan's crisis was not one explosion. It became a cycle that kept changing shape over time. But if the bubble burst decades ago, why did Japan not simply recover? Why couldn't one of the world's most innovative economies return to rapid growth? One major problem was debt. Banks and companies spent years repairing the damage from the bubble, while weak balance sheets made businesses afraid to take risks. Then came deflation. When people expect prices to stay low, they have less reason to spend today. That makes weak demand even weaker for businesses too. When consumers spend less, companies have less reason to invest. When investment falls, growth suffers. The economy becomes trapped inside its own hesitation. Then Japan faced another challenge that money could not easily fix: demographics. The population was aging, while the working-age population began to shrink. Fewer workers, more retirees, greater pressure on public finances. Japan was no longer fighting one problem. It was fighting several problems at once. But Japan did not simply watch this happen. The government and central bank fought back with stimulus, low rates, and increasingly unconventional economic policies. Interest rates were pushed extremely low. The Bank of Japan became a pioneer of policies that other central banks would later study during global crises. But monetary policy had limits. It could influence borrowing and spending, but it could not magically reverse aging or restore confidence lost after the bubble. And this makes Japan's story fascinating. The country was not destroyed, it survived. Its infrastructure, technology, and social stability remained remarkably strong. Yet survival was not the same as returning to the old Japan. The skyscrapers remained, but the explosive growth that built them was gone. Growth was different. Japan did not fall off a cliff, it entered something stranger. Weak growth, low inflation, demographic pressure, and repeated attempts to escape the cycle. And here's the twist. Japan's story is not simply about failure. Despite decades of stagnation, it remained one of the world's largest advanced economies. Its trains remained world-class, its technology stayed influential. Robotics, automobiles manufacturing, and precision engineering continued shaping industries worldwide. So perhaps the real question is not, why did Japan collapse? Maybe it is, how did Japan survive a collapse that never ended for so long? Complex. Now, Japan became something economists rarely observe. A country adapting to decades of weak growth without completely falling apart, while preserving stability. That is the deeper meaning of Japan. The collapse that never ended. It was not one spectacular crash, but a crisis that kept changing across generations. And perhaps the most uncomfortable question is this: was Japan simply the first? Or could its experience become a warning for other aging economies?